the Northwest home for paranormal, you're listening to U.S. Phenomenon with your host, Mario Magana.
From the Pacific Northwest in the shadow of the 1962 World's Fair of the Space Needle, good evening. I am your host, Mario Magana. This is U.S. Phenomenon. If you're not a subscriber to our podcast, please do so by going to your favorite podcasting platform to subscribe. Tonight, we're going to cover a few things that, I don't know, I wouldn't say that this is like end times, but we're going to cover, is this end times? I mean, I'm just going to get to it straight to the point. Our guest tonight need no introduction. We have Mark Jacobson to my right. We also have Michael Parker. For those who are watching the show, you can go to our website, my website, onairmario.com, to watch the Twitch replay of the show, all right? Or you can download the podcast, or you can go to your listen to whatever radio station you may listen to. Guys, welcome to the show. Hopefully my vacation Bible school training has gave me enough information. What a wild week to begin with. I know that we still have a guy at large where hopefully they'll catch this guy soon. We have a guy who did a mass shooting in Maine, and obviously that's going on right now. We're on the cusp of Halloween Eve. This weekend, everyone is just going to be to the nines. Clearly, you're dressed up, going out tonight. Parker, where are you going?
Going to go see Nick Cave from Melbourne, Australia, my wife's boyfriend. He gets our money every time he comes to town, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
I'm kidding about that, but she does love the dude. So,
yeah, awesome.
See that movie he wrote the screenplay for? The Proposition or something like that?
Probably. I mean,
Cowboy movie, yeah.
I wish I was 1/20th as prolific as him. But anyway, we're going to go to downtown LA and watch that tonight. Very excited.
So the other piece that I wanted to talk about was what's been going on since October. Was a conflict. We want to call it a holy war. Political aspects, we'll call it a conflict. Some people say it's an act of war now. We're talking about Israel and Palestine going at each other's throats. I mean, and this has been going on since the beginning, the first couple of weeks of October, I believe. October 7th, I believe, is what the date was when Hamas, shots fired, I guess we would say. So I've had conversations outside of the radio broadcast show, I would say the stream podcast, and this is what really sparked me to even talk about this. This isn't just a simple like, hey, yes, people are dying, and let's not kid each other. Like, it's bad that Palestinians are passing away, innocent Palestinians, and it's terrible that it's just as equal that people from the Israeli side or Israelis are also dying at the hands of warfare. Now, guys, most people who are non-believers of some kind of higher being, spiritual, not, Muslim, Catholic, Christian, is it that simple, guys? I mean, are we talking about, oh, this is just a political situation over some land? It's not that simple, right?
Well, that's what they're fighting over.
Well,
they're not fighting over there. I mean, they might not agree religiously, but they're fighting over that strip of land there, which has all kinds of significance, as you mentioned, because that piece has been, people have been fighting over that little piece of land there since
at least 2,000 years, at least minimum.
Well, the Hebrew Bible was written basically like 3,000 years ago.
Right.
And you were talking about it then. I mean, there weren't necessarily I don't know if the Hittites and the Assyrians were necessarily Arabs, or even if the people that are currently living in Israel were the Jews of those days. But You know, they've been fighting there for a long time. And personally, as a member of the home team there, so to speak, I'm kind of find it to be very wearisome and just kind of like depressing that they can't work this out. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get why human beings, you know, with the most developed thing between their ears on this planet can't figure out something that's been going on for all these years, so they don't have to kill people every so often who have really nothing to do with it. You know, so you know, I'm in a somber mood about it, I gotta say.
I agree with Mark. I'm in incredibly somber mood, and I am no spring chicken. I got to be honest. This is the most concerned that I have been in my lifetime. And I just returned from almost 2 weeks in Turkey, and I was there. I got there on the 6th. This thing kicked off on the 7th, and I was with a group of travelers, both American, European, Australian, and we tried not to talk about the subject, but it was unavoidable. And my primary concern, I can't say that I have a dog in this fight, so I'm not trying to pick a side. I'm Team America first. And my major concern is and always has been, will our policy misfires result in some type of extremely large international conflagration from which we cannot get out of? And I guess today we attacked Syrian forces. There were airstrikes on targets in Syria, and we have aircraft carriers in the region. China moved in 6, like, I don't know, several days ago. Biden went to the Arab countries. I guess they refused to meet him. They chose to meet with the Chinese. Erdogan is now saying that he would probably side against Israel. So this is, I mean, mind-bogglingly serious. And it is, if it spirals into a larger war beyond just a
Proxy.
what it already is, I mean, I'm super freaked out, to be totally honest.
I mean, and that's why, you know, I said, is this really World War III at what we're looking at? But again, is this end times? Because we're talking about a conflict that has, again, for those who tongue in cheek don't really understand the Abrahamic covenant of who this land is supposed to belong to. Obviously, the Quran says it belongs to Hagar and Ishmael, versus the Holy Bible stating that it belongs to Isaac and Sarah. So it ain't that simple, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are non-believers, like, look, let's be honest. I don't care if you're a non-believer. Hey, do you? But this is way more complex than just like, yes, people are dying. But again, for both sides of the fence, you're looking at an extremist group who is taking something that has, you know, talking to others who, there's nothing in the Quran that says, oh, let's kill. You know, same with the Holy Bible. There's nothing in the Bible. Well, there's a ton of stuff in the Bible that isn't, you know, but it's not like, I don't know. It's just the violence.
People aren't rational, man.
Yeah.
They're not rational because, you know, you got the Israeli government is run these days by a guy who really belongs in jail, Mr. Netanyahu, you know, and, you know, I'm not trying to convict him without a trial, but it seems pretty clear. And the only way he can stay in power is maybe making deals with these ultra-Orthodox people who really are just beyond the pale as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you know, as a member of that so-called group, these people don't even consider me, because I don't believe in X, Y, and Z that they believe in. So I'm not really even part of it. They don't consider me Jewish. I mean, I got my bar mitzvah thing to prove that I am. So, you know, I don't care what they think. But these people are dangerous. And then you've got their counterparts, you know, the Hamas dudes, who are, I'd like to find out exactly how popular they are in Gaza, you know. I mean, Are they really running the show or not? I mean,
Mark,
he really knows.
no, I think that's a key point. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I got to say this. It's like when I was abroad, and a very, very close friend of mine is very well connected within the Arab world. And, we were talking about all of this, and the concern is that Hamas is essentially being used by Iran, and this will turn into another proxy war. And my larger concern, and this is where, I'm really bummed out with the Biden administration for the same reasons that I was in Ukraine, which is that as the world's, used to be, arguably still is, maybe reigning superpower, we should be mediating and not taking sides. And we're not doing that. And if anything goes wrong, let's say, a missile goes astray, hits one of these American carriers or hits a Chinese carrier, whatever, then all of a sudden you've got a massive international situation. I mean, people could argue that what happened today was an act of war, these airstrikes in Syria. I'm not saying they were unwarranted or warranted. I'm just saying that this is how things go from bad to worse really quickly. And that's what I'm concerned about. And it would be my hope and my wish that we would mediate this situation as best we could, which we didn't do in Ukraine. We immediately took a side. And I was very unpopular for urging mediation at that time instead of jumping on the Ukrainian side. And now I see this happening again in this situation. And then if we go to the next stage of this, which could be eventually fighting a three-front war, let's say China takes Taiwan or China decides to take the Philippines. And there was rumors a day or two ago that Biden was saying that we would step in and protect the Philippines. I'm not down with being the world's police anymore. And especially in such dangerous times, I wish that we would take our position and try to mediate. That being said, these are ancient disagreements, and it's very hard for a third party to work these things out. And sometimes I think we're better off not being involved.
Well, you can't not be involved when you've been funding a government since it began, 1948, which happens to be the year that I was born. In fact, I'm exactly the same age as the state of Israel because it was founded on May 13th, and my birthday is May 12th, 1948. So my entire life, these people have been fighting. Yeah. So, the thing about it is you've got these governments who really have these different kinds of, I agree with you about Biden. I mean, I thought he was going to go there and he was going to say, okay, without us, you don't exist. So this is what I expect you to do in this situation. I don't expect you to, look, you can defend yourself. You can do what you have to do because these people are just a bunch of lawless fuckers, who did this horrible thing. And, but you can't bomb these people. Now there's 700,000 people are displaced. Where are they going to go? So it's just going to spill over. And I don't necessarily know if I completely agree with all your point by point, analysis of what might happen to, make the outside my house be on fire. So when I look out the window, but it's a dangerous situation. And I think that these governments who are really pretty much illegitimate to begin with are making these decisions when actually, I always felt that 9/11, being somebody who lives in New York City, I felt the jurisdiction of the crime was in New York City. The NYPD can go over there and find these guys and put them in jail. You don't need to have the whole country go to war and bomb the wrong country, for instance.
Right.
100%.
It's just, I don't see why they can't do that. I mean, the Israelis are very embarrassed because they've got this super duper surveillance thing, and the Mossad is supposed to be like the crack unit that can outthink 500 CIA agents. Well, they screwed up. How about that? They screwed up. So I don't want hundreds of thousands of people to die just because they were asleep at the wheel when their whole thing is about security. So and I'm not complaining about the Israelis. I just think it's like, at a certain point, these people just need to go into their own rooms and calm down and take a time out, because it's not worth it. The amount of stuff that they bring to the table, as you're expressing, as Mario was expressing, this is a risky situation. And the least they can do is try to talk it out before they start killing each other. I mean, it's the human thing to do, and they should just do it.
What's interesting too is this week or over the past week, you've been watching these press conferences have been going on for Biden, and they've been asking, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to? I feel like they've been poking the bear, and finally, the attacks that you were just referring to, Michael, I felt like that was like him doing something as a reaction to some type of, press. But again, look, I think that in this case, we're talking about some holy land here that isn't as simple as drawing a line from what has been stated. These guys, the Palestinians, can't move. They can't move freely to get around. They obviously can't go into Israel. I mean, the border's blocked, right? And they can't go into Egypt. Egypt's like, yo, you ain't coming in here, right? So what are you going to do with all these people? You got a bunch of
it's about as big as the Bronx. I mean, it's not very big,
but it's mass population, right? I mean, you're talking like confined area of a ton of, million, like, isn't it like 1 million or something like that?
They got 2 million people live in this little strip, the Gaza Strip. I happened to be there one time. I drove through the whole thing in about a half an hour. So, it's not a very big place, which brings back my original point, is that, if you have such a vaunted, Secret Service kind of thing, go in there, find those people, and they know who they are. Just find them and pull them out. You don't have to kill all those people or bomb the place flat. It's just crazy. I mean, it's very upsetting because it seems like the human species has not been able to figure this stuff out yet.
Mm-mm. And I think stuff like this that is going on because you are talking about the United States backing Israel and being on the political side saying, hey, we support Israel. Fine. But you know what? This is how we're talking about. This is how this stuff escalates to where, as Michael was saying earlier, how depleted are the resources of the United States going
100%.
over there, going over to there to, put eyes on something that may be going on, and now talking about what's going on over at Russia. We still have that situation. You got the Ukraine situation going on. How taxed is the United States government or military right now?
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to go back to something Mark said, because Mark, I 100% agree with you. I was very much opposed to the whole war on terror, the way it was carried out. I was one of those guys that was in the street. I was not a fan of the Bush administration. Now, that being said, I know you have to do something, but make sure that your actions are just and are specific and not extensive and poorly planned. Because what you do is you end up creating more terrorists than you had before. And the same thing will happen now. I mean, every time someone's home or church or temple or hospital or school gets bombed, all you've done is take the survivors and the families of those survivors and now made them likely to be terrorists. And I just keep getting back to the same point. It is my wish that we could find a way. You can still support Israel, absolutely. And I agree with that. I wish that we would be able to get everyone into a mediation type situation, because I think that's the place of the U.S. I wish that we could do that, because if we don't and anybody screws up, then it gets really bad really quick.
Well, I would like to throw in a point here, which may not be that popular in this show, but
let's hear it.
The only people that are over there that are trying to do anything of a humane nature happens to be this nasty little building over there on the east side of Manhattan, the UN, which I know is all full of commies or whatever it is. People are supposed to think it's so terrible. But I mean, they really do show up and attempt to help, and they never get any credit. So I'd just like to have a little shout out for them, because they're actually on the ground doing something. So, I mean, everybody's playing politics with this kind of thing, which is dynamite. You know that these people are not going to back up on either side. They're just not going to do that. And I feel like the U.S. I mean, the thing that seems to make sense strategically from the Hamas point of view, if you want to think like what they were thinking, is the U.S. is about to make this deal to broker this deal, because the Jared Kushner deal, to broker this deal between the Saudis and the Israelis.
Mhm.
Now, if that happens, then it's basically an anti-Iran thing. That somehow the great geniuses of American foreign policy have decided that Saudi Arabia is a better deal for us than the former Persian Empire, the current Iranians, who, like 75% of the people that live there, are against the government.
Right.
And that's the deal. So I can see why Hamas might feel that, wow, this is our last chance here, because once these two people get together, we're completely finished. It doesn't justify what they did, but when you start looking at the granular parts of these different disputes, I mean, you come up with, it doesn't help you figure out what you think about it, but it's good to know about these things, because it's too big a topic. A good friend of mine who was one of my mentors, a guy named Jack Newfield, he said that, living in New York, said that anytime the topic of Israel comes up in the conversation, you got to go outside and smoke a cigarette. And then when you come back, when it's over, because if you stay, you're going to lose a friend, because people do not, they just fight over this kind of stuff, and they take it very seriously. So, and you can't really, as we know, you can't really believe what the newspaper is writing about it, and you certainly can't believe anything you read on the internet. So you've got this situation where, like, yet again, we don't really know what's going on, yet you got to take a position somehow, or the government's got to take a position. And it's very easy to make the wrong choice. And with something like this, which is a powder keg, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to be wrong.
I question why it happened now in the way that it happened, because friends of mine said that they did not believe that this was entirely Hamas generated, because Hamas might not have the armaments to perpetrate such a strike with such stealth. And you brought up the good point that why did the Israelis not detect this thing, which then brings in the hardliners in Iran, who may have helped use this to create this larger proxy war, which I think we're now going to find ourselves in. And also to your point about, anytime you mention Israel, it's like I find myself in this situation all the time, because I'm not trying to take a side, but it's like, Jesus, you're afraid to say anything about anything, because people get so freaked out about it.
Hold that thought, guys. We'll be back. You're listening to U.S. Phenomenon. All right, welcome back to the show. Michael, I know just before we got interrupted, we had to go to break, but you were saying what's interesting, this whole strike, right? When we talk about this attack, we do understand that the first shots that were fired were from Hamas, right? Yep. So we're talking about during Yom Kippur, which was 50 years to the Yom Kippur War. So, I mean, if people are taught 50 years in one day, now
it's Yom Kippur.
Sorry, being Mexican American, Mexican American,
and I'm just an Irish Scottish dude, so I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I'm on this particular topic. I happen to know the right pronunciation. Not usually, but on this particular topic, I do.
So if we're 50 years in one day, shots are fired from that last war, doesn't that make it? What's terrible, because obviously these people are celebrating, they're with family, they're in rest, they're doing their holiday, right? This is like, for those who don't believe in this thing, this is like as big as Christmas for those who believe in Christmas, or it's a big holiday. So they're fasting.
It's a day of atonement. That's when you're supposed to think about all the stuff that you did this past year that might not have been that kosher, and it's sort of like a one-stop shopping thing for every time you go to confession, this is going to take care of it in one day, which is very efficient, I think. But in any event, that's the way it is.
And so doesn't this, to me, that's why I was like, well, is this the beginning of end times? Because you're not that I'm, and the reason why I say that is like, this is not as complex. This is complex. And it's not just like, hey, we're fighting over some dirt and some land. It's really boils back to who's the rightful owner of the land. If it's biblical, if these guys are fighting biblically over some land, and we're talking that you're going to say that it belongs to, these are the heirs to the land. I mean, who's right, who's wrong? So this is where I say, for those who are non-believers, this isn't just as simple as saying, hey, by the way, as Mark was saying earlier, people are dying. Yes, Palestinians are dying. Israelis are dying. Does it have to be that way? Hell no. You could fix this.
Yeah, but that seems to be hell yes, because that seems to be what they. I mean, some people, you just can't stop them. They're going to do this thing, like that poor moron running around in Maine, because he's sick in the head, killing people. You're going to tell him that he shouldn't do this. Really doesn't make much sense. He'll go like, oh, "What are you talking about?" Boom. I mean, right. I think I'm putting. I'm just in a very upset mood about this, but I would put that kind of thing. Mr. Kill 8 people in the bowling alley, then get in your car and drive to the bar and kill another 7. Not that far away from what's going on a much larger scale in the Mideast. I mean, these people are determined to do this. They're determined to wipe each other out. So my feeling about this personally, after dealing with it all my life, is leave me out of it. Just leave me out of it. You want to take care of this business? Go in a room and duke it out or something like that, because it's very tiresome, and a lot of people get killed, and a lot of people live there. They don't have a dog in the fight. They just happens to be where their address is, and it's similar. There's a soft core version in this country with the stuff we always talk about with the right and the left, so-called right and so-called left. But I mean, that's over there is a lot more serious. They actually do bring the gun to the fight, and that both sides are totally they're just totally armed up. They're not backing down.
Do you think that works? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mario,
I really want to know that, or just get your guys' opinion on this piece, and maybe I'll wait to let you respond first, Michael. Do you think that with something like this going on over there, as we've seen recently in the last week and a half or so, more people protesting? I've seen some in Seattle being pro Palestinian Hamas protest. I think they're more pro Palestinians.
It's hard to be pro Hamas, I think.
Right, and
it's a tough position.
Right. But with that being said, do you think we're going to start seeing more terrorism happen here on the home front versus being over there on the other side of the pond?
It was Friday the 13th, and I wake up because I'm in Cappadocia, Turkey. And the guy who's leading our tour, it's just a bunch of us archaeology nerds. So we're going around Turkey and just looking at really ancient things that we all like. That morning, it's 5 a.m., and we are supposed to take a hot air balloon on Friday the 13th. And he says, Michael, there's something else. I said, I'm listening. And he goes, well, they just announced that there is now a global jihad day of rage. Now, on one side,
that's right.
My friends and we were kind of, I know this sounds awful. We were kind of laughing about it. Like, what could go wrong? We're just going to go in a hot air balloon on a global day of jihad, Friday the 13th. But it did put the idea into my head. Well, if this is legit, then yeah, we got a world of trouble. Not so much for me in Turkey, but more likely sporting events, large events where people are going to be most likely in Europe or in the US. And I later found out through another traveler who's one of my absolute best friends in the world. And I'm not going to say what he does, but he works for a royal family in that area. And he goes, I was talking to my friends and they're saying that this is even legit. That you can't announce these global jihads without going through certain steps. And there is a protocol for such. So what I'm telling you is the whole thing with that announcement was to incite. It wasn't that it was real. It was then to incite the crazies and the really hardcore people then to do something. So do I worry that something could happen on our soil or Europe or abroad? Of course. I mean, that's what happens. But knock on wood, so far that doesn't seem to have happened. But the longer this goes on, people lack objectivity on this, regardless of which side you're on, or even those of us who are trying to stay in the middle and be objective. It's very hard to be objective because everybody's got such a strong opinion, and this has gone on for so long, and it's wrapped up into our ideologies, whether we are on the right or the left. It's just, I'm very concerned. And I make the same plea that I made before. I wish that our foreign policy, and I wish the Biden administration, and Anthony Blinken and the rest of the crew could somehow, with international support, try to find a way to mediate this thing first. Just call a ceasefire of some sort. If we could pull that off. We didn't do it in Ukraine. We immediately started giving them hundreds of billions of dollars, of which we still do. And look where we're at. So now we've got this situation. And all I plead for from the bottom of my heart and my soul is mediation, not instigation.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, but what makes you think that the United States government has got enough juice to make these people just stand down? I don't think that that's really true.
Yeah,
I think that they're going to do what they want to do, and it doesn't.
Well, I'll take it a step farther, Mark. And this doesn't come from me.
I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. The United States, maybe if they ever really, I mean, at one point, Henry Kissinger or whoever would show up, and these people would actually listen to them. I mean, the only reason that anybody's going to listen to Joseph Biden or anybody who happens to be the president of the United States is because we have a lot of bread, and it's not, and
that's
we have
huge.
a lot of guns.
That's
we have
huge.
a lot of breads and a lot of guns, but it isn't because of any kind of moral standing or any of that kind of stuff.
I'm not saying that at all. And I'll take it a step farther, because you mentioned Netanyahu, who remains in power through these types of things. And I'm sorry to say it, man, I think Biden is the same way. This is something that takes the focus off corruption and inept actions and then puts the focus on something else. And I hate to be cynical, but I think anybody with even an iota of strategic understanding would see that this is what's going on. And it breaks my heart, man. And, war is a racket. What was that, Smedley Butler that said that? And it's like, the people that get screwed in all of this is just the regular people. So
the poor people.
Right. So that leaves us in this situation where the only people that could possibly make the peace are the ones who probably gain the most by not making the peace. So we are in a world of hurt.
Well, I just think that these people have to work this out for themselves.
100%.
And the United States involvement is, I didn't really know about the Syrian airstrikes. I mean, but
it just happened.
But that we're nervous about Hezbollah, and I don't think anybody really understands who's on what side in that area, because things change quite frequently. So, it just seems like, I hate to be an isolationist about this, but
I'm totally an isolationist.
Well, I mean, I feel like I happen to be in Rome the day that you were in Turkey, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at all this stuff. You've been to Rome, I guess. You're walking around and you see all these stuff from 2,000 years ago they can't build a subway station there because they have too many ancient ruins that they would go through, right? So you've got this kind of the past is constantly pressing down on you in a place like that. And in Turkey is the same way, because, there was the Roman Empire and there's the Ottoman Empire, and these imperial types have this kind of Erdogan seems to me to be one of these kind of people that like Putin. There's a lot of nostalgia for the old days when we used to run things, you know.
For sure.
And the U.S. is moving to that position. I think we are moving to the former imperial United States. So, and that's when people become dangerous, when they're kind of thinking about the past and making up their own ideas about what happened in the past. And that's how these ancient hatreds, like the Serbs against the Bosnians or the Israelis against the Arabs, you know, begin to take on speed.
Mark,
Because-
my wife is of Serbian descent, and that's exactly what comes to my mind in these types of situations. These are feuds between groups that go back centuries, sometimes thousands of years, and it's very difficult to help them come to some form of meeting ground. But I do believe that ultimately it can be done. And I mean, we didn't have any new wars for a while, and my foreign policy begins and ends no new wars. And so I said I'm an isolationist. What I really mean is I prefer to be a non-interventionist, which is different than a pacifist. You can't just sit back and let people beat you to death, but make sure that the action that you take is just and accurate and has some chance of yielding a result instead of lining the pockets of weapons creators.
That's an old problem.
100%, brother.
Yeah. So
that's what Smedley, whatever Mrs. Smedley was talking about.
Yep.
War is a racket, and it's run by people that make munitions. And who else is going to benefit from this kind of stuff? So who benefits? Always a good question. So
Mario, I wanted to ask you, because I wanted to get back to your point about this being like end times, and not to be too overly dramatic, but that is the question that a lot of people ask. I hope that that's not accurate, and I'm not enough of a biblical scholar to know, but it's certainly a reasonable question that many people pose.
I mean,
could you define what end times mean, Mario?
I mean, okay, so when Israel became a state, right, was recognized when you were born, right? I believe that Christianity believes that was the clock that started ticking to the end times. Now, do I believe that's the case? I don't know, but I will tell you, I believe now what's going on definitely ain't looking good for any of us, because the hostility of what's going on, I think there's a lot of players that want to be a part of this. They're going to escalate some stuff to be something that it doesn't even need to be, in regards to, oh, we're going to use this excuse to attack the United States if it's out there wherever they may be playing, war, police, earth police. So when I say that, when the end times, this one misfire, this fire from October 7th, beginning to the end of humanity.
Well, it's actually interesting because we had the same show, I think, remember, about a year ago. We talked about the possibilities of World War III, and we were all laughing about it, right?
Yeah.
So now we're not laughing.
No, we're not. We're not.
I mean, I don't really think, that seems to be the major point here of this conversation. A lot can change in a year, and a lot can change in a day. So, I think really watching the skies, my friends. Keep watching the skies.
Right. Really, I mean, you can't be a phenomenon show without being like, oh, hey, this is it, man. I mean, it's right. It's my job to make sure that I freak everyone out, or at least think about it, regardless on what side of the fence you might be on. Look, but I'm going to tell you right now, people, dying for religion is crazy to me. Period. Like, if you want to be Muslim, be Muslim. If someone wants to be Christian, be Christian. But again, this is somewhere else. This is here versus over there, where we're talking. This is real life. This is what they believe in. This is how it's been all their lives. There is no other way. We're dying.
Let's not give the Christians a break here. They have the 30-year war, the 100-year war. These are the Protestants against the Catholics. And they're all supposed to believe in the same thing. So
Mhm.
of a sort. So like,
Are
people are always looking for reasons to divide themselves up so they can be at each other's throats. Now, this is an unfortunate fact of human existence, it seems like to me. Maybe Darwin can go look back and figure out why this has to be or something like that, or some nice priest. But it's when you talk about things like World War III, which last year was a joke and this year it doesn't seem like such a big joke, then you got to really look within. You got to look within and see why people are suddenly willing to risk, billions, hundreds and hundreds of generations of human evolution, or however you look at these things, to
money, baby.
let's so if it's money, I mean, I think that parameters can change. I mean, and they better, because if there's nobody around, what good is your money going to do you? So, like, I mean, it's a real deep problem, and I think people should think about it.
Here's
on
what
a
I feel.
deep level.
I think you said this earlier before we even got on the show, Mark. Like, things seem so much more like you said when you were younger. 50 seems some simplistic versus how time has changed and become so more complex. You would think as a society, with everything that we have, technology and everything else, I just feel maybe it's that humans just are like, you know what? Let's just see how far we can push the edge.
I think we're just about done, because we're the only. The thing is, I believe that God created human beings because they were the only ones that were smart enough to make the machines that are going to really run the world. So it could be that. So like, because finally, God has been surfing through all these different dominant species, and the human beings are looking not that good. I mean, he's going like, man, when are we gonna let's gear up another flood here or something like that, because these guys have got to go. So,
COVID could have been part of that.
Well, let me say this, because I can't avoid saying this, and it's going to sound quite speculative and perhaps far out. But the thing that has concerned me the most with this conflict and with Ukraine is, and especially this one, if I were a person seeking to restructure the way the world works and away from sovereignty of national states, and I wanted to change everything, I would set off a war in the Middle East, especially in Israel. And I admit this is, I don't know who would be pulling these strings. I have certain ideas.
Oh yeah, I'd like to hear who's doing that.
Well, I just think people that have a different vision for the future than us. Now, listen, this could have been just what we think it is, which is Hamas fires these rockets and commits this incredible human atrocity. Israel comes back committing their own levels of human destruction. But I can't help but feel, and this gets to Mario's point about this kind of end times or world changing events. If I were to orchestrate such a thing on a global level, this is where I would start it. This is how I would do it.
You think the Masons are behind this?
No, not the Masons, but I'm just saying.
Those old guys at the Mason Hall playing pinochle, I don't think they're doing it.
I don't think that there's people who don't see this, and I don't think that there's people that don't see a way to make a buck and to keep their own level of control even more secure when they're really not doing a good job at their job. So there are people who gain things through humanitarian disasters. And I hate to say that, and I hate to be so cynical, but honestly, that's another part of what I see happening here. And if this thing spirals out, then everybody gets in the game. I mean, China and Russia are already talking. Erdogan has already said that he's going to come down on the side of Palestine. And so that leaves, NATO, I guess, even though Turkey's part of NATO, it leaves the U.S., English-speaking countries, Israel, and then we all set up and we get back to that same giant checkers games where, I'm the Cowboys and you're the 49ers and we hate each other. And that's it. And this is reinforced by the religious overtones or biases that we carry. And then it gets really, really bad. So this is complex on many levels. And that's why I'm worried.
Well, it's enough to make you feel nostalgic for the Cold War, you know.
Not a bad point.
And, you know, so like, I mean, nobody got, you know, people were getting killed all the time in like these small wars, but
yeah,
you know, the big one never went off. So now it still might, but I mean, at least you knew the good guys and the bad guys were.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, this is like the world is splintered, just like, you know, just like the rock and roll world. I mean, people used to just listen to rock and roll, and then now people that like popular music have no clue what other people listen to. So it's just, that's part of the world we live in, that there are these individual situations, any of which could blow up at any time. But I agree with you completely, Mike, that this is the one. This is a nexus place. This is a power point in world belief, world history. This is like one of these what people keep on calling this stupid inflection point. I don't know where that term came from, but
it's at least an inflection point.
Yeah, it's at least, well, I mean, there are certain power spots in the world. I believe that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're in Rome, you feel it, you know, this is where Julius Caesar was, man. He ran the world, you know, and these kind of things, and, you know, and you feel that a little bit when you're in Turkey too. A lot of places like that, but I mean, nothing is like the Holy Land, you know, which is,
and it seems like
the Holy Land. But you know who declared it? The Holy Land. But it's the Holy Land, and since people feel it is, that's worth fighting for, and they're going to keep on fighting for it. And sooner or later, something really horrible is going to happen. And I agree with you.
And the other thing that upsets me is American adventurism in the Middle East. I mean, we see how being part of the Arab Spring worked out, and the whole Syrian thing where you had a rush of refugees moving up through Europe, and that has not worked out at well. And it's just, my buddy was explaining to me, he's like, Michael, look, here's the deal. Many of these cultures, you're not going to bring them democracy, because that is not their style of governing. These are tribal communities that have different feelings. And I don't mean this in a racial way at all. This is just how they deal with life. Yeah. And so it's like, when America's going in there, hey, you know, we're going to bring you some democracy and take your oil or whatever it is, it always goes south. It always goes bad. And this is where, listen, my favorite American politician living is Ron Paul. And basically that he's my North Star of how I deal with the world. I am pro-trade, always. That is the way. The big stick thing, I don't see that working out so happily. And I do believe that if you let people govern themselves the way they govern themselves from time immemorial and just try to promote trade, if they got some money in their pocket, they're going to be a lot happier, and you're going to have a lot less unrest than if you try to impress your ways of thinking and governing upon them.
I mean, your point exactly is what happened in Pakistan when, you know, the United States, well, I mean, it was a lot different back in the 70s and 80s. And sure enough, that didn't look too good for the United States. That's for sure.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, but the thing is, like, you can't tell people that aren't you. I mean, you can't even tell the person who lives next door to you, like, what to do. I mean, so
I mean,
these big national entities get off trying to tell people how to act. I mean, that whole craziness about bringing democracy to Iraq, you know, which is a made-up country to begin with, which
is where my friend is from, and he had to leave. He and his family had to leave there and move to another country, and so he brings to this a point of view where he's just trying to help me understand it all. We're not taking sides.
Colonial people at the end of World War One, the Brits and whoever were running the place at the time, they got a new pencil out and a new crayon, and they grew some new borders, and all of a sudden there were these new countries that didn't exist before. I mean, so, and that's what Africa has been. People are upset about Africa. They seem how they can't develop. You know, meanwhile, these borders and these countries were drawn by I hate to call them, but the imperialist nations. You know, the ones that former
For sure.
colonizers, and you know, it's just doesn't. A lot of this stuff doesn't make sense to the people that actually live there. So,
And then you extrapolate to right now, and you looked at, okay, China sends 6 carrier groups. We send 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. China's now talking to Russia. Russia's talking to Turkey. We're talking to, you know, the people we usually talk to. All I'm saying is that these small things then provide Mark's inflection point by which now we get to like set the field, you know, and you guys are over there and we're over here with really deadly possible outcomes.
well, it's the main event. I mean, the Middle East has been the main event for a long time. That's just one of the best things about electric cars, actually. I'm not a big fan of electric cars, but you know, I'm not a big fan of electric
honestly,
cars. But I mean, when electric cars come in, these guys will not have that many cars. They won't have that many chips on their side of the table. You know.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, I have a whole opinion on the whole electric car thing, and I'll just break this down right quick. Here's the deal with EVs. They are not what they're cracked up to be. And if you want to talk about human exploitation, you have not seen.
I'm not, I don't want to get into that, but
I have to get this off my chest because it's,
like, you know,
oil
as the major, you know, dealing point of the world is a kind of diminishing thing, no matter what you want to say. I mean, by 2035, you know, they won't be making any fossil fuel cars. So therefore, these people, their power and their ability to blow up the world is going to decrease. So that's.
And I would come back at that by saying Biden stepped in it from day one by destroying the fossil fuel oil industry within the U.S. It has not stopped. I mean, gas is like $7 a gallon here. We have plenty of natural gas and oil, but he's intent on stopping that. So who did that empower? That empowered Russia, and it empowers these Middle Eastern states that you're talking about. Meanwhile, the EV thing just doesn't work. We do not have the infrastructure to do that, and the lithium that is required. Dude, you have to move hundreds of thousands of pounds of earth.
I'm not interested. I'm not. I don't want to.
But it's a big deal because you brought it up. So it's like
I bring it up. But the thing is, like, what I'm saying is that, like, why are the people in the Middle East? Why do we care about them?
Money.
They have oil, right? That's it.
Well, okay, no. Here's the deal. So there are countries within the Middle East who are actually forward thinking, and they want to make us like them better. So they are trying to make things more appealing. For example, Saudi Arabia. I'm not talking about the royal family, but I'm talking about regular people. So we just have to understand we're different from them. They're different from us, but they do want to move into the 21st century. And by God, they are extremely tech and PR savvy. And they know that the picture that they are trying to portray to the world is something that they hope will behoove them in the future. So they know what's up. And it's really, I think we're behind the times. I think we're the ones still clinging to this old world structure and this old way of looking at things where we got to jump on sides.
If you were on top, wouldn't you want to hold on to the old order?
I mean, that's what
of course.
But there's nothing you can do about that because times change. And we've just been talking about American power is on the decline. I mean, you can wave a million flags. It's not going to change that, you know.
I think I think that all these different, you know, things that we've gone over this evening clearly
so much more substantive discussion than we usually have. God,
I mean,
more fun when we're just fooling around.
And
by the way, I love you guys. Just so everybody's clear, I love talking to these guys.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's definitely always fun.
No, and you know what? I think that if someone can walk away from the show tonight, if they stream it, whatever, look at the podcast or watch it on the whatever Useverse or whatever you want to call it, a Twitch or YouTube, if it makes it and doesn't get banned. Look, again, I think we're all on the same page in regards to people dying. People are dying right now over what I think a lot of people who aren't religious don't understand. These people are fighting over land that was from one side promised to them versus the other side promised to them.
By who? Tell me who promised them
According-
this land.
according to the biblical writings versus the Quran that said that they were, these are in their Bibles to state the story of the Abrahamic covenant told in a story, flipped.
One of the great things about stories is there's a million interpretations. So
that is correct.
So therefore, everybody should be entitled to their interpretation of what the text happens to be, but they shouldn't be allowed to kill people about it. There's a certain rule about that.
Right.
You can think whatever you want, but if you're going to start shooting, that's a different story.
And I think it seems to me that we're all on the same page on that in regards to the loss of life, regardless if you're a Palestinian or if you're an Israeli. It's unfortunate that that people are dying over religion in some land. Hopefully this will be, I hope that the United States has a backbone to step up to try to get a peace treaty involved so that there is not mass casualties that will continue to happen until someone has enough cojones to step up.
I will say this because I said this 100 times about the Ukraine thing on my old show. It's like people would say, well, Parker, where do you come down? I'm like, I stand with the people of both countries, not down with their governments. I stand with the people of those countries. And the same happens in this particular conflict. And right now, the Palestinians, I mean, they ain't going anywhere because nobody will take them. So this is incredibly complex. And it's incredibly saddening. And my hope is that cooler heads will prevail. I don't know how that will come about, because if it doesn't, then everything goes south quick.
Any last minute comments, Mark? I know you're upset, but yeah.
No, I'm not. It's just sort of like I agree with.
Yeah.
I think we are in agreement about that. I just feel like, I just want. In my heart of hearts, I wish that people could just remember that if you look at somebody face to face and you discuss it with them, you might come to a conclusion that doesn't involve anybody dying. So, I don't understand why people can't get that. They just can't get that through their heads.
On that note, I know everyone has to go. What are you up to these last? What have you been up to, Parker, besides traveling the world and touching fossils?
Well, I've been back, about a week and a half. I just dropped 3 new Halloween-related podcasts, Michael Parker Media. I would love for people to come on there. I need to get Mark Jacobson on to talk about William Cooper here in the next month or 2 or 3. And I've got to read Behold a Pale Horse first and then read Mark's book. But I do want to talk to Mark about that. But yeah, if people...
my book, well, man.
Dude, there's a lot of books I haven't read, so don't feel bad. But I'm still doing the podcast, Michael Parker Media. I would love for people to come visit me, and I'm trying to do less politics and more just kind of non-political stuff that's interesting, like Mario does.
You know what I will tell you? Audiobook. Pale Horse Rider is the audiobook on 1.5 speed. Get through it faster.
Copy that.
What about you, Mark? Are you still?
Well, I just got back from. I was in Italy and I was in France over the past couple of weeks. I really enjoyed Naples. Naples is a wonderful town. It's like it was the most bombed town during World War II, and it has that kind of feeling of people that are. Yeah, the world's blowing up, but so what? It happens every day. They just, the thing is, I was wondering about what do people feel about Mussolini, right? And they're going, we had Caligula, we had all these bad emperors. Mussolini, who's just they had a different attitude about things. They've been around a long time, and their attitude is you just can't trust your leaders. So. They weren't going to get that bent out of shape about this kind of stuff, and I kind of appreciate it. And they have a really good coffee. Mm-hmm. And the French, I must say, even though it may not be that popular, Paris is just a wonderful city. Really, it's very civilized.
Amen.
It is very super civilized, And another unpopular point is, as a movie fan, I would like to point out that in the metropolitan area of Paris, France, the government, the nasty old government, pays for 38 separate movie theaters to just show whatever films they feel like showing, regardless of how much money they bring into the box office. And to me, that's a civilized move. So, more power to them.
On that note, if you need to subscribe to the podcast, do so. Go follow Michael Parker or Mark Jacobson. Their handles at Michael
Parker, LA.
And then where is your Pale Horse Rider? Right,
Oh,
that's
boy. Let's write a book.
That's right.
On Instagram.
There we go. There,
at least in this incarnation.
Yes. Guys, I appreciate it. It's always fun. I was, this even messed up my Halloween spooky stuff. I will say that, but I figured that
it's not spooky enough for you.
I mean, at times it's pretty spooky, but at the end of the day, man, I want to talk about stuff coming out of the ground, like Michael Jackson Thriller type stuff, darkness falls upon the land.
Yeah, I did want to say to everybody, have a happy Halloween. Be safe. Samhain, Halloween, whatever you call it. Be safe out there, people.
Yep. I'm gonna be passing out candy.
Me too.
I'm gonna after I'm done with the show, I'm heading to a couple parties, or at least I'm gonna head out tonight. So we'll see.
Have fun. Come back.
All right, guys. For the entire crew here, Mark Jacobson, Michael Parker, myself, and my daughter Sophia Magana. Be sure to look up at the sky because you never know what you might see. Good night.
Good night.